So welcome everyone. Nice to see some new faces on here. I see Laura LaPlante. Hello, Laura. It's nice to see you. An art teacher friend. Angelica's on. Joy, Hannah. My mom. So we're going to jump in and get started, folks. You know, they usually kind of trickle in. So we have kind of a variety of folks who've joined the session today. It's a little bit different session where we're going to be talking more about the artistic side of connecting with nature and using spices as painting pigments. So this should be really interesting if you're you have a lot of craft projects or art projects going on, or for some of you I know who have relatives and stuff that are doing some vegetable dyeing for you know, clothing and all those kind of interesting things. Kind of sky's the limit here. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Brita, who's our guest lecturer tonight. I should say guest artist. So Brita has her MFA in ceramics, but she's doing a lot of painting now in kind of multiple mediums. I feel like she can explain a little bit more about her art, which you'll see a little bit of tonight. But a dear friend and who's pursuing her master's in art therapy and additionally an Ayurvedic health counselor license right now. So she's kind of looking at combining all these diverse fields in some type of holistic way to help everyone. So I'll hand it over to her and then she can explain a little bit about what we're going to do tonight. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, hi, everyone in the vortex. It's like 100 degrees here in Pennsylvania, so it might get a little sweaty, but I'm just going to start right in. And I just want to thank all of you for sharing all of your time and space with me tonight, and Emily in Setu, Vermont, for hosting me this evening. And we relatively have a short time, so let's get started. For the first 30 minutes, I'm going to be presenting on the 6 tastes of Ayurveda and also how to cultivate a relationship with the elements and taste by creating spice pigments as a creative experience by art making. There will be 15 minutes at the end for questioning and processing. So if you have a burning question, you can pop it in the chat box and you know, I'd rather you understand, you know, before we continue. So no problem there. So my name is Brita. I grew up in Northeast PA and I have a very intimate connection with nature. I'm an avid food enthusiast as well as environmentalist. And as an artist, I also have a deep connection to the way I use material as expression. I have a background in fine arts, being trained as a professional ceramic artist, and I'm also currently receiving my master's in art therapy, as well as a professional certification as an Ayurvedic health counselor. So Ayurveda has provided me a way to connect and form relationship to myself and to the elements found in nature. Having experienced cooking and preparing food in kitchens as a temporary profession throughout my life has brought many questions to the table for me and has been a catalyst to where I am today. So my experience in the restaurant business called my relationship with food into question. What am I actually eating and how is this of value to my wellness? How am I connecting and experienced with what I'm eating? How, as a Western culture, are we closing the gap in transparency surrounding the food industry truths? So these all became very important questions as I continued to build relationship to myself and wellness. So what became impactful for me was the dissociation of relationship with myself and as an observation others had with what they were eating and also given. The use of halo words such as farm to table, fresh, all natural, and other vibrant language used to describe the experience and ingredients of food was so far what was actually happening, and the food was so far from the truth used to describe it. So this was sad and also powerful for me, as it brought me to why I love Ayurveda so much. What was important to me was how I was going to consciously use my experience to bridge the gap in relationship with food, element, and expression. A part of my living dream is to offer opportunity to individuals to connect authentically to their own healing process using alternative modalities such as art and Ayurveda. That being said, so let's start with the 6 taste of Ayurveda, in which has inspired me as an artist to connect to my own elemental expression. So painting with spice pigments, inspired by the taste of Ayurveda. Let me just put Okay, now I can see. Okay. Sorry, the vortex is a little techie sometimes for me. Okay, so the 6 tastes of Ayurveda. Um, so I'm just going to briefly go over them, and then we'll jump right into the art making process. So there's 6 tastes: Mandora, which is sweet; Amla, sour; Lavana, salty; Katu, pungent, which is spicy; and Tikta, bitter; and Kashaya, astringent. And so these 6 tastes are all used therapeutically in Ayurveda to treat imbalances and to bring you back into right relationship with yourself. Okay. So the elemental composition of the 6 tastes: Mandora, which is the sweet taste, have a lot of earth and water elements in them. Amla, sour taste, earth and fire elements. Lavana, which is the salty taste, has wire and fire elements. And the Katu, pungent taste, fire and air elements. Tikta, I always remember this one because it has 2 T's, and bitter has 2 T's. Air and ether elements. And then Kashaya, astringent taste, earth and air elements. So the qualities of the taste. Ayurveda always treats with qualities as well. Like increases like, and balances, or opposites balance. And so the qualities are used as a notifier to see kind of where and how to approach someone's imbalance. So Mandora, which is the sweet, is heavy, oily, cool, and sticky. Amla is light, hot, and moist. Lavana is sharp, hot, and heavy. Katu is dry, light, hot, and sharp. Tikta is dry, light, and cool, which is bitter, like greens and salads. And Kashaya, heavy, cool, and dry. So like vinegars, honey would be in that category. So I invite you to do some creative thinking. Now you don't have to answer this. If you want to speak out in the chat box, that's fine too. So I just kind of want you to engage with your senses. So Ayurveda is all about creating relationship with your core elements and the elements around you. And that relationship is, sometimes it's polarized, sometimes it's off or in balance. And so a way back to that, or a way that I see back to that, is really kind of experiencing those elemental qualities with your sensory experience. So what is your sensory experience with taste? How does your body respond to sensory stimulation? How do you use your senses when you're creating, cooking, and being? So not only do we have to ingest foods that bring us to balance with the right qualities for what we need, we can have a psycho-emotional approach to that as well. Okay, next slide. So poll time, keeping it traditional for the weeks that we've done little mini series here. Poll. So the poll will be a way for you to engage your previous knowledge of the doshas and the tastes. And so based on the elemental qualities of the taste and the main principle of Ayurveda, like increases like and opposites balance, which tastes balance each dosha? And then there's a clues page. So I have the qualities written out here of all the doshas, and then the quality of the tastes. And so then the 2 kind of giveaways would sit qualities balance. So you kind of just kind of want to go through and submit your answers. Let me see, how do I? Okay, looks like some of you have got some in there. That's great. Sometimes you have to guess. It's okay. There's isn't no one's getting graded here. This is just kind of a way for you to explore, and do some critical thinking. That all of these are anonymous and no one will know who's who when they come in. It's just to engage. So 2 out of 9 people have their tests in. So I want to just get them in. It's okay if you don't know, we're going to be going over them. Okay. So we're going to close out in about 10 seconds. It's okay if you don't know, you can just submit to see. We have, I don't really mean to put pressure on you, but 5 out of 9 are in. Great job, everyone. 6 out of 9. Okay, and now we're going to go over and the host is going to share the poll results. So where's my next slide here? Okay, so which taste balance kapha dosha? So kapha dosha is pungent, bitter, and astringent taste. So opposite qualities of kapha, which is heavy, sweet, dense. We want to like enliven kapha, create some heat, air it out a little bit. So you would need fire, air, and ether elements. Okay. And which taste balance pitta dosha? Okay, great. Sweet, definitely. Okay, so bitter, astringent, and sweet taste balance. And why adding opposite qualities of pitta, fire and water, will balance pitta. So we need elements of earth, air, and ether. And then which taste balance vata dosha? Sweet, sour, and salty. So we would kind of want to create some warming, grounding energy in vata because vata has a lot of movement and mobility. So why? Adding opposite qualities of vata, so opposite of air and ether, will settle vata, elements of fire, or earth, and water. Okay, great job. Moving on. And now we're going to move into the fun part, which is where I had a really great experience doing this. And so a part of, this COVID-19 pandemic, where most supply stores were closed and access to studio spaces as an artist, you may not have been able to show your work or go to the studio as frequent as often as you'd like. And so this, to me, another important impactful question is my relationship to the mediums in which I was using as expression, and sustainability was huge for me in this. And so I moved a lot of my art process and art making outside, where I've been doing landscape sculptures. And a huge question that was important for me during this over the past few months was, how am I getting what I need in expression by not taking? And so using spice pigments as a way to kind of bring myself into relationship with the elements, and then also like add value to the earth and as it's nurturing me, is what I've done here. So creative supplies. Hold on one second. I'm sorry. Okay. So paintbrushes, spices from kitchen, sustainable medium surface. This is just what you're painting on, like cardboard, recycled paper, sketch pad, whatever you prefer. Water, jars, cups, and vessels, and an intention. I always think it's good to lead what you're doing with intention, as again, it starts to cultivate and bring you into relationship with what your active conscious process is. And so another optional medium is something I was exploring was limestone gesso. And these ingredients would be the limestone and the sugar. And then you can also use sesame oil. So like acrylic paint, which is water-based, you can use like oil paint, you can use sesame oil with your spices. But these are optional. If you don't have any of these things, be explorative in your house, use what you have. This isn't about like going out and getting everything you need. And if you want to do that, that would be great. It's just about, how do we express with what we have around us? And elementally, we have all the elements around us at all times. Okay, so I'm going to run you through. This is exciting. This is water and spices. So this is just, I used like mostly all of the spices in my kitchen, but you can pick and choose if you want to use one or two or different ones or mixed combinations, it's fine too. So you add the desired spice into the vessel, add a small amount of water to the spice, and then mix the water and spice together, creating your spice pigment. So the water and spice pigments are a more chalky and restrictive medium. They are lighter in substance and have a pastel tone. So you can see here on the right is turmeric, which is like one of my favorite colors, is okra. So that's turmeric. And then there's dulce flakes here. I put CCFT, which is huge Ayurveda digestive supplement, cumin, coriander, and fennel seeds together. So whatever you wish. And so this is an example of my water and spice painting. And so I named it Source. And then these are just the list of spices that I used in the art making. It was fun. So this was like all of my spices. So turmeric, cumin, fennel, ginger, cayenne, paprika, cinnamon, cardamom, coriander, and dulce seaweed. I kind of wanted to get a feel for what they would do. So the yellow is turmeric, and then you can see the CCFT up here in the sky, or the background is the little seeds and some dulce flake. There's some cayenne pepper, which is the orange, and then there's up here on the top. I don't know if you guys can see my arrow, but that's ginger. Ginger was really light, light yellow. Okay, next thing. Okay, so these are the oil and spices. So similar process, add the desired spice into the vessel, add a small amount of sesame oil to the spice, and then mix the spice and oil together, creating a lush spice pigment. So if you're using sesame oil instead of water, you need to prime the background of the painting medium with gesso. If you have gesso, that's great. If you don't, in the next couple slides, I'll show you that process. It's just so that the pigment won't absorb fully onto the medium. So you won't have like this kind of like sloshy mess of a painting, and it will kind of like hold the color and then hold the form of what you're painting. So oil pigments are deeper in shade, creating a deeper saturation of hue. And there's not much variation here. It's just there's more of a glaze and gloss, and they're heavier and dense. So a lot of kapha qualities in these. They're a fluid medium, so restrictive as the water and spice. Fluid would be there. You just have more access to, I would say, movement in a way, where it creates more of like an emotional expression, where a restrictive medium is like pencil, chalk pastel versus oil pastel. So there's the way that it's gliding on the surface is different. So we have turmeric here, and then we have, that's ginger, and then this is paprika or cayenne in the top right. And then in the background here, I'm not sure, they all kind of got together. And then back here is, that's cinnamon. Cinnamon was interesting because it's like, so, it almost became gray. And then this is just clove, the cluster here. Oh, I lost my arrow. Right here is clove of eucalyptus, which is interesting because it gave some texture to the surface. Okay. And then here you're seeing sesame oil, and then painted on a gesso surface with eucalyptus and clove, and then the big orange here is cayenne. So it kind of was gritty. So there's definitely some texture with when you apply more of a thickness of the spices used. So mixing the limestone gesso. Now, if you don't have, limestone is a huge thing that gardeners use to bring their pH level back to a neutral state as in a garden or a farmer. So if you don't have that, that's okay. You can also, gesso is essentially just a chalk in a glue binder. So this is just a sustainable, non-toxic version. And if you have gesso, that's fine too. But something that I was doing as my creative process, I was offering these paintings as an offering and a thank you to the earth and the elements as providing for me. So I just use limestone. Now you can use chalk, or like chalkboard chalk, or sidewalk chalk, and you can like crush that up too and make it like a powder, and it will do the same thing as limestone. So 2 coats of limestone. a half a cup of sugar, water to mix, and then a stovetop to heat. So be careful while on the stovetop, the pot in the bowl gets very hot. And I'll show you a picture of what I mean by that. So just protect yourself and always be careful. So maybe if you have oven mitts or a towel, always grab the bowl with a towel and never a wet towel because it will steam your hand. So do not breathe in the dry limestone or taste or eat the gesso. So you need the gesso if you're using oil. So if you're using sesame oil in your pigments, you want the gesso to prime the background so it doesn't absorb in. You can also use gesso for some texture. As a clay artist, I love to work with the texture, so I kind of like more substance and things. So you can also use this for that aspect in your paintings as well. So here's the process. As you can see in the left here, these are the ingredients in the bowl: the sugar, the limestone, and the water. So you're kind of wanting to make pancake batter. So a thick pancake batter. You can make it thicker or thinner, kind of really however you're feeling, but like a thicker pancake batter would work best for priming the surface or just adding the gesso right into your pigments. So you want to add the sugar and limestone to a mixing bowl, and then introduce the water into the mixture until a slightly thick consistency forms. And this is what I mean by the pancake batter. I'm horrible at flipping pancakes, by the way. Place the bowl on top of the stove. So the stove top, so using a towel or the hot pad to protect your finger. So this is where that metal bowl, that will get so hot it will burn you. So just use finger mitts. So you want to mix the gesso while turning the bowl until the sugar dissolves. So it's like you're making a roux or like hollandaise sauce. You want to kind of spin and turn at the same and whisk at the same time. This may take some experimenting as the thickness of paste is sometimes tricky. So as it heats up, I will say it will appear to be thinner just because there's heat and you're liquefying it. But when you set it aside to cool, it will become thicker. So if it cools too much, it will become like really pasty, and then you might have to add a little bit more water in. If you want it a little stickier, if you want more, you just make sure you add a little bit more sugar and the limestone to kind of make the ratio the same. So from when we started. So then just transfer it into a cup or bowl, and then you can prime the background of your surfaces with this, let it dry, and then you can continue painting. You can also add the gesso and the spice together. And for me, this was really awesome because it created texture, more substance, and it gave kind of a different coloration to the spice pigments. So you can use either water and spice or sesame oil and spice, and then you can mix those, and then you can add it directly right into the pigment. So add your desired spice into the vessel. You can either add water or oil to the spice, mix them together to make the spice pigment. And then additionally, you want to add a scoop of your gesso mixture directly into the pigment. So adding the gesso right into the mixed pigments will allow your pigments to have more texture, like I said, and then it gives it more substance, like a mixed media feel to your creation. So I just want to note, this was an interesting science experiment. So limestone may alter the original color of the spice pigment due to its chemistry makeup. I don't know why. I'm sure that would be a fun research project, but so as you can see in the turmeric up here to the left, so that's turmeric, and then adding the limestone, you can see surrounding it, it's starting to change color. And then on the next slide here, I have a better example. But here to the right, that orange color is the turmeric now, which is interesting. And so the three examples I gave with making the spice pigments, we're using spice and oil, spice and gesso, and spice and water. And so you can see the slight different coloration. And this is just all turmeric. So just to give like a visual. So turmeric in all of the way that I processed it throughout this lecture. So this is to the left, turmeric and sesame oil, and you can see the coloration is slightly different than the turmeric and water on the all the way to the right. And in the middle here, we have our little random one, turmeric and gesso, which totally altered the color as soon as you put the gesso in, which was fun to do actually, and kind of gave you more of a palette. Okay. And then these are just some of my creations that I'll run through here. And so this is womb. And the way that I use the pigments is I like to use the sesame oil. I just like the fluidity of it. And I also used a lot of gesso in this process. So the limestone gesso was mixed into the pigments, and it gave, you know, like I said, more texture, more substance, like a different quality than just a single without the gesso. So ginger, paprika, cayenne, turmeric, coriander, cardamom, and cinnamon. And while I was doing this, I was actively engaged. Like you can like smell the aroma from the spices, and so that was a great kind of like sensory response to like how I was creating, and you know, listening to music, and really kind of like feeling the elemental qualities of each spice was something interesting. Again, this I use a lot of limestone gesso. Like the majority of the white here in this is the gesso, the sesame oil, the paprika, and cayenne. So just two spices, which was interesting because these two are very close in combination. The color to them. These you could smell were a little potent, a little pungent when I was using them. Cardamom moon, again, the limestone gesso is the white. Cinnamon, like I said, it was gray. It's very gray. It was very like, it was really pretty. I actually like the cinnamon a lot. The cardamom is gray too, and then just water. So this I use no oil. Similar to the other images, it just doesn't have oil. So the gesso was used without oil in this one. And Untitled, again, the limestone gesso, and just water, no oil, paprika, cayenne, turmeric, and cardamom. And the turmeric is the line in the middle here. It went from that beautiful ochre color. As soon as you mixed with the limestone, it changed color. Really interesting. It was really cool. That was cool. And that kind of brings us to open up the floor for questions, processing. I invite you to speak out if you have any questions. I also have my email here in the bottom. Feel free to email me about anything. And yeah, so I can't see anyone. I'm not familiar with the doing a presentation online, so this has been interesting for me. So thank you. I'm going to bring everyone up now. Okay.
So people can feel free to write in the chat box. I think Brita probably has that up now, or you can just unmute yourself to ask some questions.
I lost the chat box.
That's okay. I can also tell you if there's something.
Okay.
So this is Angelica. How much spice are we talking here? Like a teaspoon, or is it just, or more? What amounts are you talking about for these paintings?
So great question. I used just like a spoonful of each one. I didn't want to like overdo it. You know, I can get like a little heavy handed, but like a spoonful of each spice, like a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons. And then you can kind of mix the water or oil in, and you can see the consistency change. So you kind of want to stop when you feel the consistency, like not too like a medium amount, like a pancake batter. I would keep coming back to that, but it seems to be something that makes most sense. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay.
And Brita, for clarification, you're talking spice powders.
Yes. So I did use some whole spices, some seeds, but that doesn't give you That will give you texture and like a 3D effect versus like a painting pigment. But yeah, so majority of everything seen here is a powder, spice powder.
We have a question in the chat box. It says, two questions actually. First is there a brand of limestone that you like?
Oh, interesting question. No, I don't know. This I found in my landlord's old chicken shed. So, yeah, I don't know. I can't answer that question best for you. This is really old. Seems to work totally fine. I would say, and I even use it in my garden, and so things are sprouting up beautifully. Yeah.
Okay. And it sounds like what you're encouraging too is experiment, connect with it. So the other question that's in here, or there's questions just coming, so I'm just gonna keep reading them off. So what's the drying time of the artwork?
Oh, great question. So the oil definitely longer because okay, let me back up here. So I did this as an all-day event, and so I would say a couple hours for each piece. If you're using oil and gesso, definitely a little bit longer, and depending on the thickness of how much application you use on the artwork, it might take longer. So you can kind of see it. It will start to lighten a little bit because it's like a pigment. It's not specifically paint. So this is more of a totally different medium and it will be fun for you to see how it changes. So the lightness kind of comes when it's totally dry and it may get a little flaky. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
I think so. They can type it in if they want more info. What's the best paper medium you've noticed for using the oil-based spice paint on? Like a super thick paper, or like how do you frame it? It's like paper and framing. Like what do you recommend?
Great question. So I would say when you're painting on anything, you kind of, like watercolor paint or paper, charcoal based paper, like a magazine. So I'm going to explain, like a magazine is like it's already glossed. It has like a substance on it already. So it's not going to absorb as well. So something that's kind of like rough in stock would be best for the oil based. And then to frame, this I always find interesting because there's so many different ways you can map them. And if you wanted to kind of preserve it, you could spray like an adhesive on it, to like if a charcoal drawing, like a spray adhesive. But this, as for my process, I didn't do any of that because I was just offering them back into the earth. I didn't want to put any like toxics on it. So, but yeah, and I would just, tell you to explore your framing options. Sometimes I like take a picture of it and then I either bring a piece of paper, the size or the color of it, to the framing store so I can really kind of feel what it's going to look like in that frame. And because like frames are so expensive, and then you get there and there's like 300, and then half of them are on 50% off, and then the other half you can't get anyone to answer your question. So I just kind of bring the artwork or a piece of it with me to kind of fit the frame. Yeah, because it all depends, Okay. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Would you recommend gesso as a base, whether you're using water or oil?
So yes, that is something that I did notice helped it like keep the pigments on the paper well, and it gives it more of a substance, more texture. And the paintings that I did not use gesso as a base kind of got really flaky and dry. So I had to vacuum. So that was interesting too. So I did like the extra like support that the gesso gave, either oil or water. Did that answer your question?
This is from David, if you can see David. I should have been saying people's names. Sorry, folks, all these beautiful questions. I'm like, so Laura asked, should the spice in water be like pancake batter, or was that for the spice and oil?
So both. So, and you can see, so I always go light on the water, or the oil at first, and then you can kind of add in as you're, like if you're painting the surface that you want kind of smooth, I would say add a little bit more oil or water. But the less oil and water you use, you might have gaps as they're granulated spices. So if you're using more, you're going to have less of that coloration over the surface, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Like, because they're granulated. Well, I guess, yeah. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
So this is from Aaron Murphy. Not sure if I missed this, but when on the stove, how warm do you get the mixture? So like how warm are you creating this?
So I had it on like a medium high heat. I don't want it on like 10, maybe like 7, like 6 to 8. Okay. And so, and then again, that pot is going to get hot unless you're using like a actual pot. So just protect your fingers, and then you just kind of want to leave it on there. You can kind of see, so you want the sugar to dissolve, because the sugar is going to be your binder, and that's what's going to hold, like it's going to make the gesso smooth and the right consistency, instead of like sugar and limestone together. It's kind of like, so when you heat it, it's melting that sugar to create that into the binder, to create that as the binder. I hope that answers. So like a 6 to 8, probably more of like a 7, 8, I would say. And not for long, couple minutes. It will take like 3 minutes if it's on that hot heat. If you're cooking with fire, if you have a fire stove, you might want to go a little bit lower. I have an electric stove, but I'm jealous of people that have fire stoves. Yeah, best way to cook. But if you're using fire, you definitely want to go a little, like, it's definitely hotter. So like a 7, 8 on fire is like gonna, like you might have, like you might, there might be some like fumes or something.
So how long does it take to make the spice pigment? Like how long for the saturation to occur?
Oh, like instantly. So as soon as you combine the substance with, or the liquid to the spice, it will, it will just appear. But interesting. So that's an interesting question. So I didn't see with the turmeric, like the more powdered, like the more powdery kind of like powders, it was much different than it's like the paprika and the cayenne were like granulated almost. Cinnamon was like granulated. And then with the turmeric, which is like such an ultra fine powder, like I would say hibiscus powder would do this too, is so it's super soft. So it definitely was more of a like more pasty. Yeah, that's a great question. But it's similar, same amount of time. Yeah. Oh, so
Any other questions from folks? I know we have a lot of teachers on actually, Brita, working with different grades. So we're hopeful to see some of these projects maybe people do that are like earth friendly and biodegradable and all, like, you know, a new way to experience things. And we also have another art therapist on, which seems to be a growing number of you guys. So
hi.
So, another question did come in. Does temperature, as far as environment humidity, make a difference? Because you're in Pennsylvania. So have you noticed anything different when you're doing these in the winter versus now? Or not yet?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I think there is a bug on my back. Sorry, it's crawling on me. Yeah, great question. So I would think like in the humidity that it might take longer to dry. So just like and especially with oil, like oil paint humidity, I don't know, like, but definitely if it might take a little bit longer to dry. So if you're framing or you're giving as a gift, you just might want to allot like a couple extra hours. Winter is notorious for being dry. So I'm sure, it wouldn't be as long as it would now in the humidity and like now in the thick of the summer. So That's a great question. Yeah. Yeah. So if anyone, I don't know what time it is, but, we have 5 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have 5 more minutes. I can send any information. My email is at the bottom here. I'll type it in here. So, and it's like it's kind of like an art therapy directive if you're a teacher or you're using this in your therapeutic setting. Kind of like a great way to almost like a free way, because if you're using this as a project at home, or you're telling parents or whatever to kind of engage with their kids, if you're working with kids, like this is just a great way, if the only thing, if you're working with kids, like if you don't want to maybe use like the spicier spices that they tend to touch their face and everything, so like get it in their eye, like I don't know, but it's a great directive to kind of engage with like natural elements. And I'm going to stop talking so you guys can answer or ask questions.
Britta, I guess.
It's Joy.
Oh, Joy. Go for it.
Thank you for sharing your work. I also did this with older adults, and it was really nice. They had dementia, and like that sensory, experience was really powerful. So definitely kids.
Great.
And I would say also older adults, if someone has an older parent.
Yeah, definitely.
It's really great experience, but also you want to be careful for them not to put things in their mouth. Yeah, it's great.
I know. I think people have a tendency with food to like want to taste everything.
Yeah.
But this is maybe something it's not like it wouldn't be harmful, but it might, it's not recommended, especially with the gesso. I did try it.
Absolutely.
It's like gross, but not recommended. Sorry.
So any final questions for Britta? If people write them in, I'll read them out after, but I do want to say, Britta, this is a really great, thank you so much for sharing, one. And two, it's a really nice way to start to get people to balance things with the spices, because not always is it spices you have to taste. You also have other senses that you could take these things in. And so it'd be really interesting just to experiment to say like, okay, like during the seasons that are, where it's recommended to balance kapha, and we know kapha is related to these things, like would painting like that or smelling the spices, how would that influence actually your own well-being? So tying it into kind of the philosophies of Ayurveda that we've spent 8 weeks chatting about, which Britta's doing now, in making all this eco-friendly art. So I wanted to say thank you. She put her email up here. The email will also be on, we'll post all this, the PowerPoint. Right now we're Facebook Living, so it's on Facebook Live already. We'll post a better quality of the video in the next few days, as well as on our blog, we'll pull out some of the recipes she has. So if you don't want to watch the whole video, it'll be on there, and then we'll include her her contact and everything. Would you mind if I share my screen for the next lecture, Britta?
Oh yeah. How do I stop sharing?
So, yeah, just stop sharing, and then I'll
Okay.
I'll share, and then people can just see here. Okay, so here we are. So this was kind of the end of we're so happy to have actually both guest lecturers are on tonight. Lynn also joined to kind of come and support our little friend circle, and to hear Britta's lovely lecture. And so we are going to continue these. We're not going to continue them every week, but we're going to do 2 a month. So the hope is that I would present 1 a month, and then we'll have maybe some of these folks back if they're so willing, or kind of integrate some other folks so we keep getting these unique perspectives and sharing their arts and their experience of Ayurveda. So the next one's going to be on June 9th at 7. I'll be doing Eating for Summer, so we'll be transitioning to the summer season. We haven't talked a lot about Pitta, but we'll be talking about Pitta then, and how to balance, right? If we're experiencing a lot of heat things, or if people get heat rash, or all these different things that come about in summer, perhaps in your areas. Maybe some of you are already experiencing them who are kind of zooming in from the Carolinas. And then other happenings next week. I know some of you already signed up for our 8-week Foundations of Ayurveda. So that will be starting next Thursday at 6 p.m. So those of you who signed up, you'll be getting a Zoom a Zoom that you can go on each week, and we'll kind of keep building our knowledge off of what we already have. And if folks are interested in just seeing what that's going to be all about, just connect with me and you can kind of come to the first lecture and see if it's something that you'd be interested in delving deeper into. It will be more about the philosophy and how to integrate it in your life in a holistic way. So less about these kind of one-off topics, although they'll be integrated, but it's more of a way for you to construct your own understanding. And we have weekly meditation classes Harmeet's hosting on Monday evenings. Drop-ins are welcome to those. And some of you have been joining those too, which is really fun. A way to connect in a new way with yourself. So without further ado, we're right at 7:45 because Brita did a perfect job of timing her lecture. And thank you again, Brita. That was just lovely. I'm sure everybody enjoyed so much. And if you do end up doing any of this, please take pictures. I'm sure Brita, I know myself, would love to see how your kids or yourself has become inspired to paint with some spices. So thank you all. Thanks, Brita.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. Get creative. Okay.
And we'll just